The Adventurers Guild. It's housed within a very plain-looking gray-bricked building here in Nulova, but I've heard that elsewhere the buildings get very fancy. It's said that in one of the gnomish countries their buildings are made of solid gold, but I don't know if I believe that. What's to stop people from shaving bits off when nobody's looking? Although, as one of the largest multinational organizations in the world, the Adventurers Guild could probably afford to replace the shaved bits of their buildings. Still, it's hard to imagine they have ultra-luxurious buildings when faced with how mundane their branch in Nulova is. Things look just as plain on the inside as they do on the outside. I'd expected Nick to be underwhelmed, but his typically stoic face appeared enamored with every little detail surrounding us. The quest board surrounded by adventurers looking for a good job to match their skills. The gathering area, where you can grab a bite to eat or a pint to drink before setting off. You normally wouldn't eat here after a job because there are better places to eat in the village. I personally prefer Corno's fried food over what the Adventurers Guild has on offer. Nick seemed particularly interested in the trader pit, where an adventuring party was selling loot they'd gotten from a dungeon dive. We'd already explained to Nick that you can buy and sell stuff at the guild when he was being fussy about turning freelancer, but seeing is believing, I suppose. The pit's where I bought my axe. "Hi there," Nima greeted us. "How can I help you?" "Hi, Nima," Yulk said. "We'd like to register Nick as an adventurer." "Oh, you're the human, aren't you?" she asked. Nick stammered an affirmative. Most of the people that frequent Nuleva are used to seeing Nima around, so it took me a second to realize what had the boy nervous. Then I realized that he didn't have anything not to be nervous about. Nima is notable for her beauty, wears barely anything, and above all else is 7 feet tall. Above all else. Orc women don't typically get as tall as our men do, but Nima is related to Alern, so I guess it makes sense. That whole family is huge. If I remember right, she's his half-sister, but they're not close. Alern's dad ran off on Nima's mom or something. Considering how similar Nima and her mom look, I can't even begin to fathom why he would run off. "All right, so we'll have you fill out some forms and then we'll get you connected to the Kura Guard to determine your level. Then we'll do your newbie brief," she explained. "Oh, okay," came Nick's suave reply. I couldn't help but grin. From Nick's height, there was no way to maintain proper eye contact and avoid staring at Nima's head-sized breasts. Instead, he was staring firmly at the counter like a well-trained pupper trying to avoid gazing longingly at their owner's food. Most of the other races have difficulty not staring, and I suppose humans are no different. My amusement was cut short when I realized that I might have to have an awkward conversation with the boy about orc sexual compatibility, namely, the lack thereof. Maybe I can pawn it off on Yulk. He's much more open about such discussions and would probably be better at it. I glanced at him, but he was studying Nick with a slightly confused look on his face. Oh, right. He's a dunce when it comes to sexuality. Shit. "Here you go," Nima said as she set a packet on the counter. "There are pencils at the table over there. Fill these out and bring them back, okay?" Yeah, thank you," Nick stammered. Nima and I made eye contact and she smiled knowingly. I grinned in response as we turned to head to the gathering area. She had previously made it clear that she likes me, but I wasn't ready to commit just yet. I don't have the finances to give her the life she deserves. Instead, we'd made a deal that when I get to level 10, we'd try dating and see where things went. When you hit level 10, you get access to better-paying jobs and 50% of the retail value of the goods you sell, which would give me enough money to support Mom and properly court Nima. We'd made this deal last year when I was only level 6, and I'd been grinding hard ever since. Nick said as we got to one of the tables. "I can't read this." "What?" I asked. "I don't understand this writing." He clarified. "But you speak perfect Orcish. How are you unable to read it?" I demanded. "Probably the same way you can't," Yulk said, causing me to flinch. "This is something that I've been thinking about, though. Why is it that you can speak Orcish, Nick?" I'm speaking English," Nick replied. "I thought you were speaking English. What the hell is going on? That's what I would like to know. English? I'd never heard of English. Must be a language from his world or whatever. But in this world, there are only 8 languages. Orcish, Elvish, Diamond Drow, Draken, Dwarven, Gnomish, and Anyalish. They're all similar enough that it's easy to learn to speak and understand them. Yolk taught me how to speak them when he got back from schooling around. It was pretty fun until we got to the writing part. I can't seem to wrap my head around letters and words, no matter what language they're in. Don't have that problem with math, though. Numbers are nice. Maybe it's a skill, Yolk ventured. It's not on my skill list, though. Nick said. Yolk pondered for a moment. Is your skill list ability listed on your skill list? No. Then maybe whatever is allowing you to see your skill list is also automatically translating what you hear and say. Yeah, I interrupted impatiently. You might be able to speak all the languages. Congrats, whatever. Problem is, you can't read them. Have Yolk fill out the forms for you like he did for me. The two of them looked at me with blank expressions, as if they hadn't already thought of that solution and were surprised that I was the one who came up with it. I crossed my arms and glared back at them. What the hell are you looking at? You didn't think of that? I demanded. I'm supposed to be the dumb one. We're going to be in real trouble if it turns out that I'm the smartest of the 3 of us. Fair enough, Yolk replied. But I'll have you know that dumb means you're not able to talk. So just by the merit of being able to yell at us, you're not... Whatever, I interrupted. Just get the fucking forms filled out. Yolk grinned at me and grabbed the forms from Nick. He began reading aloud as I sat down next to them. The questionnaire portion went by fairly easily, except for a couple of parts. We had to add our own answer to species, and there was some confusion when it came to the race part. Turns out that Nick's world had a different definition of race than ours, so Yolk explained that your race was based on where your parents are from. So Nick is an American human. His children would also be American humans, but his grandchildren would be Nulovan humans. Assuming he found other humans, had children, and those children stuck around Nuliva. Yolk began to explain the various reasons why one's race was accounted for, and I zoned out. International diversity treaties and bans are boring. Instead, I thought about what life would be like with Nima. We'd date for a year or 2, then have a nice year-long engagement followed by a wedding if all went well. I've even planned out our first date. I'll come by with a gift, a nice 16-inch engraved hunting knife, and take her out to dinner at Corno's. Then we'll swing by the training arena and watch people spar until the sun goes down, and to wrap up the date, we'll stargaze. If she still likes me afterward, then she'll decide what we do on the next date. Once we get engaged, we'll be moving in together. I'll probably have to knock down a wall to give us some more room in my bedroom. It'll be a pain, but we'd also get a bigger living room out of it. Well, unless her mom makes a fuss and has me move in with them instead. I don't think that'll happen, though. So if a guild can prove that they've hired a certain amount of Irritans, they'll get access to governmental jobs from Irrita, and even bonuses, Yolk said. Anyways, on to the disclosures. First is the payment system. Until you're level 5, the guild will be taking a 20% commission on your jobs and giving you a 1% discount on guild-related services. You also get 10% of retail for drops you sell to the guild. What guild-related services? Nick asked. Food, gear, and medical. Well, the medical that you have to pay for, at least, I replied. What medical stuff is free? Anything life-threatening. The stuff that isn't considered life-threatening, like rashes or cosmetic stuff, you've got to pay for. The deals get better as you level up, too, Yolk explained. When you hit level 5, the commission drops down to 15% and you get a 5% discount. And 25% of retail on your drops, I added. At level 10, it's 10% on the commission, 10% on the discount, 50% of retail on the drops, and access to better-paying jobs. Then at level 20, it gets even better. It's 5% commission, 65% of retail, a 15% discount, and no limitations on jobs. At that point, if you want a job, it's yours. Okay, I get it now, Nick said. But what are these jobs? I thought you just went into the dungeon and got stuff to sell. The jobs vary. There are jobs for going into the dungeon, to find specific drops, exterminating monsters in the wastes, escorting travelers and other things like that, I answered. The more intense the job's expected to be, the higher the level restriction and pay is. It's not a perfect system, though, so you should be careful about which jobs you accept. Fetch quests are an under five's bread and butter, Yolk added. So basically, the higher my level, the less they take from my pay, and the more benefits I actually get, Nick said. All right. This next part's about the examinations. Yolk flapped a page. You agree to a quarterly review of your level as well as magical, physical, and mental health. You also understand that if you are found to have a health issue, you will be required to get treatment before you can accept further jobs. You have the right to decline treatment and the right to have your level checked at any time. Magical health? Nick asked. Yeah, I said. Like a curse or something wrong with your core. Yolk sorted the papers in front of Nick and said, All right, we're just about through them all. There's still the stuff about the International Merchant Association, other associated guilds, and... I stopped listening after Yolk mentioned the International Merchant Association. Woe be unto Nick if he asks a question about the IMA. Yolk will talk his weirdy round ears right off his head. Instead, I decided to check the job board. It would be a while before the over-20s were ready to go into the dungeon, so hopefully there'd be a nice simple job to take Nick on. I looked at the board and ignored everything without artwork on it. The pictures drawn by the auto-scribe were great, realistic, and not stylized, so you know exactly what you're looking at. I grabbed a few promising ones, one about false mint, one about a tree with some fruits on it, and one regarding giant rats. I brought the 3 postings up to Nima. Hey Nima, Yolk and Nick are still filling out the paperwork, so I'm checking out the jobs. Could you read these to me? I asked. She looked confused for a second before remembering my issue regarding the written word, and then she looked embarrassed for forgetting. Then there was a smidge of pity in her eyes. I don't like being pitied, but when it's coming from those beautiful eyes, I guess it's all right. Oh, sweetie, she replied. Of course I will. This first one is a gathering mission for false mint from the forest depths. 50 leaves are needed. The forest, north or south? It doesn't specify. Just need 50 false mint leaves from the forest. Okay, we might do that one. What's the next one about? Gathering yipples. They want a sack full. Where are the yipple trees? I scratched my neck. It had been years since I went gathering fruit. On the edge of the forest leading into the wastes to the south, she answered. The south, that's good. Might do that one too. What about the rats? Let's see. There's a pack of giant rats harassing caravans in the waste to the south. Reports indicate there's only about a dozen, and the poster is offering 2 copper per pelt delivered to the guild. It's a level 5 and over job. Well, that should be fine. Yolk and I are over 5s, so we can bring Nick along as a party member, right? I asked, leaning on the counter with my most charming smile. Of course, she smiled back, but you will be censured if he gets killed or crippled, though. Fat chance of that, I replied. Despite appearances, that little fucker can pack a wallop. What's this? Nima asked, feigning shock. The legendary Nash giving praise to someone. He must be pretty capable. Yeah, laugh it up, I chuckled. Don't tell him I said that, though. He'll go and get an ego. My lips are sealed, she winked. Our eyes met, and we smiled. The rest of the world faded away for a moment before Yolk's voice snapped me back to reality. I missed what he said, so I looked back to Nima. She looked confused as well, and I got a fuzzy feeling in my chest when I realized she missed it too. We'd been lost in each other's eyes. The forms. Yolk slowly stated. They're done. We're ready for the examinations. What were you 2 up to? I was accepting some jobs for us to do to pass the time. We got urban fruit gathering with some hunting in the wastes. Shouldn't take more than a day and a half, I said quickly. Herbs and fruit? I thought you guys only eat meat, Nick replied. Well, we fucking season it. We're not animals, I grumbled. And anyway, these jobs weren't posted by orcs. They were posted by traders and stuff. Right. Well, what are we hunting? He asked. Giant rats out in the wastes. We're grabbing the plants on the way there. Why is it always fucking rats? Nick grumbled under his breath. Hey, I countered. This is an over 5 quest. Don't underestimate giant rats. They're more than just a nuisance. They'll take down prey twice your size without a sweat. The only reason you're going to be able to do this job is because Yulk and I are protecting you. Now let's get your exams done so we can head out. Which one would you like to start with? Nima asked the human. I'd like to have my level assessed, please, he replied. Sure thing, she said cheerily as she reached into a drawer behind her. She pulled out a contraption and a metallic guild card and set them on the counter. The contraption that the guild uses to connect someone to the Kuragard is a strange-looking thing. It's a rectangular box with 6 stubby legs, 1 on each corner and 2 in the middle. Each leg is made of a different metal, and the box itself looks like it's made of obsidian. She inserted the card into a slot on the part of the box facing us and pressed her fingers into some indents on her side of the box. Blue light spilled out of the top of the box and formed a square in front of us. Then green light shot out and entered the square, creating numbers, letters, and the palm of a hand. The light took on a mirror-like quality as it hardened, still hovering a few inches above the contraption. Then she fed the forms into the back of the box. All right, please place your hand on the handprint until you feel a slight electric shock, Nima said. Without saying anything, Nick reached out and placed his hand on the hardened light. It was a full 10 seconds before Nick winced slightly and withdrew his hand. I shared a look with Yulk. This thing was usually much faster. It made some weird noises that sounded a lot like birds chirping, and then the numbers and letters changed. Yulk and Nima looked at the letters and numbers with confusion. So did Nick and I, but that's only natural considering our inability to read the damn things. Once the 2 readers recovered from their confusion, their eyebrows shot up. What is it? I asked, growing impatient. He's level 5, Yulk answered in a quiet voice. I looked at him intently, trying to figure out if he was joking. When I turned to look at Nima, her expression told me he wasn't. Is that rare? Nick asked. Yeah, it is, I replied. What's his class? Unknown, Nima said. Well, that figures, I chuckled, turning to Nick. Mine's unknown too, has been ever since I hit level 7. Look, don't let your level get to your head. You're still inexperienced and should follow our lead during the hunt. Yeah, he responded. I will. On the bright side, though, the quest level isn't a problem anymore. Smart-ass, I grumbled. Better to be a smart-ass than a dumb-ass. Yulk grinned. All right, let's get the rest of the exams out of the way. Yeah, go on. I'm gonna hang out here for a bit, I said. Nima, Yulk, and Nick went to the medical portion of the guild hall while I sat in the gathering area. I stared at the 3 job posters. Level 5, huh? I can't help but be a little jealous. It had taken me so long to reach that milestone. So many monsters slain, so many friends lost. All Nick needed was a little training. It might have been even more depressing if we had trained him longer. I hope he at least lives up to the level.